Yo guys, and good evening. This is going to be a commentary for all of the SNK games that I decided to do for the Summer of Arcade special that I've been working on for a while now. This is going to be the Summer of Arcade entry for Metal Slug. So I knew for a while that I wanted to go and I wanted to do something with arcade games, but it's actually kind of difficult. Sourcing arcade games is kind of hard these days. I try to go and at least own a copy of each and every game that I go and run on an emulator. The problem with SNK games is that they're hard to get these days. They're not terribly, easy or anything like that. The arcades have been out of production for quite some time. Like, you can't even find repaired SNK cabinets anymore. But you can still go and you can look on eBay and stuff, and you can still get the original cartridges. Sometimes they're just single games like Metal Slug, other times they're combo cartridges that'll have like Metal Slug 1 and 2, or sometimes Metal Slug 1, 2, and 3 with the later arcade cabinets that they would produce and stuff. I know that I wanted to do these for a while now. It's a project that had been on my mind for quite some time, and my godchild has never seen an arcade a day in his life at all, so I was like, I'm a fan of emulation, I'm a fan of arcades. Let's go ahead and start collecting the cartridges and stuff. I had gotten really lucky because a movie theater in my town was going out of business, and they were getting rid of all their old arcades and all their old arcade cartridges, and the cabinets were in horrible shape, but the cartridges were still in good shape, so I was able to go and source an adapter on eBay to actually go and pull the ROMs with. And it was really nice because SNK didn't really do a good job going and like trying to copy protect any of the ROMs or anything on any of the cartridges. So I sat down and I was like, this is a pretty good time to go and introduce my godchild essentially to old arcades because he had never seen one. And I feel that, like, as you get older and stuff, you kind of sit there and you're like, this is really, really nice. I really wish I could introduce these to the newer generations and stuff. So a lot of things have changed. I started mobile video production to go and be able to make videos on the go, essentially. I've been in and out of a lot of doctor's offices and stuff, and I kind of just said to myself, I'm like, oh man, my health is kind of cruddy. Like I'm trying to take care of myself, but it's like, okay, until we know absolutely what's going on with you, you're going to be in and out of doctor's offices, and, we're going to try to find out what's going on. So the entire time I was like, I'm going to have a long stint of time on the road, going to various other cities because the city I'm in doesn't have everything that I need. So this equates to like 3, sometimes 4-hour trips. And a lot of the time it just kind of feels like wasted time. So I had started doing this series on a device called the AYN Odin. It's basically an Android handheld, and once I had ripped the ROMs, I had gone and loaded up the Odin with RetroArch, essentially, and its associated cores, and then it was only running Android 10, so I didn't have access to the luxury of having video recording built in, so that was an external app, and then the video editor itself was also an external app. And so the Summer of Arcade line of videos was essentially me going and saying, oh, okay, well, we're going to go ahead and we're just going to take video production on the go. The AYN Odin gets amazing battery life. It has its fair share of issues and stuff as far as software stability, but I can go and for those hours that I'm on the road, that my driver is going and taking me to appointments and stuff, I can go and play these games, film them in the background, and then not just film them, but also edit them, get them ready to port to YouTube and stuff. So I had started video production in the background very quietly. I didn't expect to come back to YouTube for quite some time. I just kind of sat there and I was like, this may be it. I may not be making videos anymore, but I kind of sat back and it's like, well, life kind of goes on no matter what kind of issues you're having. Like life gives you challenges and stuff, and it was just kind of rough, like I wasn't really expecting to be able to make it back, but I was like, if I'm on the road, I can go and I can relax. And I can go and work on stuff on my time, and then when I go home, I can just be tired from the day and I can just rest. So the entire line of Summer Arcade is literally me taking an Android handheld, loading it up with ROMs and various softwares that are needed, and learning to run RetroArch, then going and learning to film it, then learning to go and get it running at 60 frames. And I was trying to, with all my other videos, they were gone and shot on a 2012 Mac Mini, and I would film on the Mac Mini as well as play the game on the Mac Mini and do any kind of associated editing. And for something that old, it was actually pretty high quality. I was relatively shocked, and so my goal with the AYN Odin was to literally do the same thing. Is it up to the same standard? No, it's pretty close, but it's not entirely there. But it does something that the Mac can't, and that is allow me to go and take video production on the road. And I've always been really, really happy with it, I guess. You know, it doesn't run flawlessly. You know, some videos have like really weird frame pacing issues and I had to go back and re-render. And other videos didn't. Like, I had to literally figure out how to do mobile rendering to make all these videos happen. If I didn't, these wouldn't be here. Because the Mac, strangely enough, Mac OS in general does not have any good emulators for MAME at all. Like, nothing. It wasn't until I got the Odin that I had even considered going and getting the cartridges for all these SNK games, and then when the theater was going out of business, it was literally just dumb luck. So it has been a lot of adaptation and stuff, but I feel like I was able to do most of these videos pretty well. They're not all 100%, but I would have to say they're a close 93 to 95% all the time. And given the limitations of the platform that I had been working on for a while, you know, I think that it came out really well. If the Odin was running like Android 11, 12, or 13, I would have access to the built-in screen recorder, which would be able to record internalized audio and everything else. But since it only runs 10, I had to have like 2 separate apps just to get everything functioning correctly. But I actually like the apps a little bit more because on Android 13, which is what my Pixel 6 Pro runs, you don't really have an option when it comes to going and setting the resolution and the frame rate and everything else. It just records the screen. As an end result, it tries to record it in 4K all the time. And it always, the file size always ends up being really huge. So at least on the Odin, I can literally sit here and say, okay, well, I want it running at 60 frames. And I want it set to the resolution of the Odin, which is 1080p, you know. And it's just been, it's been a really huge boon, I think. So working on a lot of these games and stuff, I've been working on them over the course of a couple of weeks because there's just so many videos. Most of them are well over an hour long. And so learning how to do everything from scratch on a mobile platform has actually been really, really cool. It's been quite the experience. So I got to do a lot of cool things when working on these videos and stuff. You know, I got to go and learn how to do mobile video production. I got to learn how to set up a retro handheld to take all of my retro games with me wherever I go, which is nice because I don't spend a lot of time in my home these days. I'm traveling so much. And then the entire time I was working on this project, I got to literally go and do it with my godson and a couple of my goddaughters to introduce them to old arcade games that they have never seen before, because these cabinets are no longer around. SNK no longer services them. You may find a couple in Japan, but outside of that, if you find an old SNK cabinet running Metal Slug, it's a rarity, at least from what I've seen. So there was a lot of tweaking and tuning that went into these videos and stuff. There was a lot of things I had to consider. I knew that I wasn't really going to be good at these games. These games are known for being brutally hard and stuff, and you know, I knew that I was going to die a lot, so there was a couple of quality of life settings that I kicked on. All these games are running in free play. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, you know, you're dying a lot, or oh, you know, you're doing this, you're doing that. These arcade games are already difficult. I don't see myself pulling off no-hit runs or within the original batch of lives runs. I mean, I just don't really see it happening. I tried, it didn't really go over too well. So what I did is I had set up the emulator to free play. Originally I was going to try to go for a different kind of aesthetic where I set up a button on the Odin as a coin chute that I would have to mash to give myself credits. I mean, it's wonderful for making it a little bit more believable, you know, for the sake of aesthetic and stuff. But I didn't really like it because I wanted to focus more on playing the game, I think, a fair bit, instead of being like, oh my god, I'm out of time, you know, let's go ahead and ram as many quarters as we can. And I mean, it would have been cool, but I just, at the end of the day, just didn't really care for it. And so, as a consequence of that, free play is turned on so I could just go and enjoy it. A lot of these visuals have aged really well. They didn't really require too much cleanup. I'm still using BRZ multipass freescale for it and stuff because it just looks better on the display. I don't mind chunky graphics and stuff. Those old pixel arts don't really bother me too much, but I like BRZ because I feel that the artwork shines a little bit more, looks a little bit more cartoony. SNK always had like a hell of an aesthetic with all their games and stuff. Like, it always had that very strong kind of anime influence, kind of caricature-ish character design just in general, and I've always really liked that. So I wanted a filter that actually goes and emphasizes that a little bit more, and Multipass Freescale does a wonderful job with it. I didn't really change the games too much. Like, there was multiple things I could have done for them and stuff. The biggest being overclocking. A lot of people are like, well, there's overclocking settings that you can do for Final Burn Neo to smoothen out the games, because a lot of these older SNK games, the SNK hardware was basically just a souped-up Sega Genesis. That's all it was. So these visuals are pretty heavy-handed for the time. You know, they're a little bit advanced and stuff, and as a consequence of this and the limitation of the hardware, there's a lot of slowdown. I think Metal Slug 2 probably suffers from it the worst. There's a little bit of slowdown in all of them and stuff, but I didn't want to do any sort of modification to how the game functions itself, because I feel like it kind of robs the authenticity a bit. You know, I just wanted to update the visuals just a little bit, and then the rest of it I just kind of wanted to go and have it stay the same to kind of exhibit, you know, what it was like playing it on the arcade back then, you know. So I went ahead and, like, all the sound bugs are still there. All of the frame rate issues are still there. You know, nothing's really changed. The only difference is that the visuals are updated a little bit, and then, of course, free play is turned on. There was even a couple of things that I could have gotten to where I could have turned Metal Slug into a pseudo twin-stick shooter a little bit to make aiming a little bit better. You know, as you can see here, I'm sitting here and I'm fighting this tank and stuff, and I have to jump and shoot and jump and shoot, and, you know, I don't know, I wanted to keep it preserved like that. I kind of wanted to keep it as close to my childhood as I possibly could, you know, because it just feels right. You know, it's very nostalgic to me and stuff, and I didn't really want to mess around with it too much. So pretty much all the games run like this. All the footage was shot in 60 frames to the best of my ability. Some of these games are oddball, and they only would record at like 57 frames, I believe. And then others would be like 56. So I had to do a lot of tweaking and tuning to actually get it to function right, especially with this video, because the frame pacing for it was so bad. So I had to go and learn proper frame pacing, how to do the math for that, and then doodle it in to get it to render correctly, essentially. So learning how to run these old SNK games has actually been really, really fun. You know, I had a good time with it and stuff. So my history of Metal Slug, the first one is actually kind of funny a little bit. So I was younger, you know, like I had a Nintendo back at my house, like an old NES and stuff, and I'd play Mario on it, but we had a movie theater in my town that would constantly stock fresh arcades. And they would rotate the cabinets out a fair bit. They had another location over in Tucson and Phoenix that they would go and they would constantly rotate out with and stuff. So they always, it was every couple of months, they always had fresh stuff to play. When I was a kid, I would just get so excited because I feel with SNK games, there was this really kind of intimidating presence almost, where it's like, it really reminded me of the advertising campaign for Sega at the time, where it's like Sega does what Nintendo don't, in a direct reference to the hardware spec. And SNK was no different in this regard, you know. There was heavy advertising for the 100 megawatt shock and everything else, you know, and it was really nice to go to the movie theater and see these arcade cabs because the graphics were amazing. The sound was really deep and bassy. You know, you weren't really. I feel back then when you went to arcades, you weren't really just going to the arcade. You were having an experience, right? Like nowadays, when you go and you get games, you go and you bring them home. You know, you install them, you update them, you get mugged with a bunch of microtransactions. Like I kind of feel like this whole process kind of shits on the experience. But when I was younger, you know, if you wanted to play something like this and you showed up, you slipped a quarter in the slot. You essentially clicked start and off you went. You know, that was pretty much the experience. You didn't really have to worry about it, and that's what I kind of miss about arcades a fair bit. You just showed up, you popped in your money, you got mugged, you popped in more money, you got mugged some more. And depending on how much cash you had in your wallet or how good you were, you inevitably or eventually beat the game. So that's something that I've always kind of liked about arcades. You know, like I know a lot of the younger people these days will come in contact with an arcade game and they're like, oh my god, it's so hard. You know, why is it so hard? This is so difficult. And what a lot of people don't really realize is back then, that's how you made your money, essentially. You know, if you went to the arcade, it was meant to be hard, and in some instances unfair, because they were reliant on making money at their arcades, as well as selling cartridges to maintain viability, you know. If the game wasn't popular, if it wasn't really raking in cash, people just really didn't want anything to do with it. So a lot of these games are kind of like artificial difficulty, I feel, where it's very evident you'll miss something, but you'll still take damage from it and die from it and everything else. But that was kind of the nature of the business back then. You know, that's how companies stayed viable, and that's how they were able to go and produce sequels and everything else. It was driven by sales. And so if you go and your game is incredibly easy to beat, right? Like a person's in and out in a half hour, naturally they're not going to want to come back to that unless the game is just naturally that fun that, you know, it has so much replay value attached to it even after they'd beaten it. So with a lot of these old SNK games, they're hard. They're really hard. I mean, they're not like super hard by today's standard, but I find that they're mainly hard from limitation. Like I feel like a lot of the Metal Slug games are really, really fun, I think. Like, they're super fun to go and play, but I kind of feel like they're outdated a little bit. And what I mean by that is, this style of game, like these run and gun games, they've actually evolved. So when I would go to the arcade, there was just a single thumbstick, well, joystick if you would, and there was a whole mess of buttons, and that's how you played your game. But with modern run and gun games, it's not just one thumbstick, there's now two, and you can dynamically aim wherever you want. And then with the ones that are ported to console, it's the jump button is normally like a shoulder button on the left, and then, you know, shooting is a shoulder button on the right, and so you're able to maintain a large degree of mobility. And you can free aim all over the place. So I feel like a lot of these SNK games didn't really age well because the directions that you can aim in is incredibly limited. You can only aim up or left or right or down, and even aiming down you have to jump to do it. And so I feel like they didn't really age well because it's like you look at enemies and they can shoot diagonally at you, and they can go and have like tracing missiles and stuff, and it just really felt kind of odd, I think, and it just doesn't really, like, I can go back and play it, it's still fun, but in the back of my mind I'm thinking, you know, these games would be so much better if they would have just thrown in a second thumbstick. And so it's like that with a lot of arcade games, I think. And I think, like, when a lot of these games were coming out, it was kind of a hardware limitation, you know, because thumbsticks took a while to catch on. You know, at least I think they did. I mean, nobody really truly used thumbsticks in their full capacity, I don't think, until, I want to say PlayStation 2 and OG Xbox. So for like a lot of these older games and stuff, they just used a single thumbstick, you know, even the N64 and stuff, and so, you know, a lot of these modern games have made really good innovations, you know, that would really benefit a lot of games like this, where you could just go and have free aim and everything else, you know, and the controls have evolved a lot as well, which is really, really nice. So I die a lot during these games. I'm not too embarrassed to admit it. The games are hard. You know, I know a lot of people probably show up to these videos and they're like, hey, you know, you're dying a lot. What the fuck? I'm expecting MLG pro plays and everything else, but I knew that I was already going to struggle with these because my vision's already borked and stuff, and my godson had made the comment, he's like, you know, why do you want to play it if you know you're going to struggle with it? And I had sat down and, you know, it's like I feel like I have to take questions like that seriously sometimes. Like, I feel like I have to literally look at him and say, hey, because I want to show people that it can be done, that it's, like, not the end and stuff. And so there was, like, a lot of reservations for, like, a long time when I was going and shooting these games, and I was saying to myself, you know, does dying in a game become obnoxious past a certain point? You know, it's like, do I want to try to do it in, like, 10 lives or 15 lives or, you know, however many lives it takes, you know, and I sat down. Oh man, it was the middle of the night. I was talking with a couple of close friends of mine, and they were like, you know, Reem, you should easily go and do this, hon. You should try it out. You should go and do it. And I just kind of sat there, and I was like, you know, what if I'm bad at it? You know, because I do worry about it. Like, I like my videos to be as entertaining as I can make them. I mean, you're not going to be getting pro plays here by any means, but at the same time, you know, you don't want it to be a complete and utter shit show. So I just kind of sat back for a while, and it's like, you know, knowing that these games are hard and stuff, knowing that they're essentially meant to just rob me blind, given the nature of what an arcade game is, do I want to sit here and actually, you know, go through the motions with it and stuff, knowing that there are other players out there that are doing it with without dying, without getting hit, you know, like without all kinds of stuff, essentially, without using continues, things like that. And I eventually said, you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna do it. I looked around YouTube. I was like, is there anybody that is legally blind that is doing these games? You know, or is it nothing but able-bodied folks? And I looked around, and it was like, okay, well, this guy's doing it, but, you know, he's not having issues. You know, this woman's doing it, she's not having issues. And so I said, you know, the disabled community needs proper representation. You know, we need to show people that we can go and we can challenge things, and we can go and we can achieve things if we grind it out or if we just keep going at it and everything else. Now, the argument could be made that there's no way for me to fail because I do have free play on. But I think my greatest nemesis at this point would literally be quitting from frustration, I think, because I would literally be sitting here and dying so much that it actually becomes annoying to me and frustrating. So my the only way I could really fail is literally if I give up. So I almost failed all these games a multitude of times, and it's because a lot of the times my vision is so bad that I can't really tell what the hell's going on screen. And so to produce these videos, most of these games had a minimum of 9 runs. The entire series took me about, oh man, the entire series to film took me close to 300 hours to do. And I was doing it while I was on vacation. Literally, like while I was taking a break from like everything, you know, having like a little tiny vacation to myself, I said, you know what, we're gonna do this. And so the first game I started with was Metal Slug, because I loved playing it as a kid. I was bad at it. The game would rob me continuously, but I still wanted to do it. And so I said, you know what, I'm gonna pick out a select few games, and by few I mean like 17 of them. Like, they had a roster of, I think, a little bit over 100 games, and I wanted to do at least 17 or 18 of them. So I said, okay, we're going to do all the Metal Slugs. We're literally going to go, and all the games that are accessible enough for me to play, we're going to go and do them. So I did all the Metal Slugs, and, you know, there's a couple of other games that I did as well, and it was just a really nice experience, because I think as a gamer, I like to sit back and say, yeah, I did this. Oh, pardon me. But I like to say, yeah, I did this as a gamer and stuff. I think when you're going and gaming with a disability, it's not quite the same, you know, as gaming when you're able-bodied. Because if you're going and playing something like Dark Souls, right, and you go and you die a lot, you know, you just kind of say to yourself, okay, I have to get good. And, you know, I've played Dark Souls while blind as well. You know, I play a lot of the Souls games while blind. And so with the arcade games, I find that it's kind of a different monster, because it's not so much the point of, okay, getting good at memorizing patterns. The pattern is substantially different, and then you also have to figure out exactly where things are at. Like, take these bombs, for example. Normally these bombs would just kind of look like a string of little tiny bombs that are falling out of the, well, the aircraft there. Not sure what the hell is that supposed to be, but, you know, they don't really quite look like bombs to me anymore. They're like so low definition and so friggin' big looking because of, well, being in low definition that I have to figure out where exactly the bomb is at, because obviously they're bigger than what they appear. And I don't want to try to overcorrect or anything like that. Like, overcorrection kills me more than anything else in these games because everything looks a lot bigger than what it is. Going and identifying, like, POWs is really, really tough. Going and picking out what weapon I want to use out of, like, the little drops they give me is tough as well, because normally you would just go and say, hey, this has an H on it, or this has a G on it, or whatever the hell the case is. You know, I don't want this, or I do want this, I want to use this. And so I find that as a blind gamer and stuff, it's kind of tough because if I go and I grab that box, right, and it's not a weapon that I want, I have to make it work for the sake of the run. Like, I have to make a executive choice, I think. Either I do the entire run without any sort of... I do the entire run without any sort of weapon whatsoever aside from the pistol. Or I can sit there and choose to pick up whatever box I see, and then whatever happens, happens. Essentially, you gotta learn to roll with the punches. So with Metal Slug and stuff, I think it kind of embodies that to the full extent. Like, the other games are a little bit more gracious about it, but Metal Slug really isn't, because not all weapons in Metal Slug are created equal. There's quite a few weapons that you can get in the later games that are just fucking awful. But with Metal Slug 1, it feels more contained and stuff. So these were all things I had to think about when I started this series. I just kind of sat back and I thought about it, and I was like, okay, you know, this is getting kind of ridiculous. And then a large portion of Metal Slug, I think, is kind of unpredictable as well, so you have to learn to roll the punches with that to boot. So I literally said, okay, I'm going to do these SNK games, I'm going to buckle down, I'm going to learn it to the best of my ability, I'm going to do as many runs as I need to be proficient at it, to overcome it with a disability, and then I'm going to work really hard on it, I'm going to film it, and then I'm going to stick it on YouTube to show disabled folks, yes, we can do this too. We can enjoy games and everything else just like everybody else. We have to put in more time and effort, but we can do it. And so that's why I signed on to this project. I was going to go back to making regular long plays, like I had done with PlayStation games and stuff, prior to the health issues that I've been having for a while now. Well, not so much a while, more like a little bit. Definitely feels a lot longer than what it is. But, yeah, I was definitely really excited for a lot of this. I still am. I do want to do more arcade games in the future. But with Metal Slug, I was like, it's got to happen. If I'm going to be doing these arcade games, I literally have to go and I have to start with SNK, and I got to start with Metal Slug. I can't do anything else. It just doesn't feel right. And so I did. I got everything set up, I got everything running, and I would literally go and I would film it on the road. And then while I would be in the doctor's appointment, I would set it up to render, and then throw the Odin into sleep mode, stick it in its case, shove it in my bag. And then I would normally have, on the way back, it would be a 4 or 5 hour drive. So I could go do another game, and then, depending on how fast I finished it, I could just set it up to render, throw it back in my bag, and then get home, plug the Odin in, and then just relax for the rest of the evening playing, you know, whatever the hell it is that I want to play. And so in many ways, going and doing the Blind Gamers Arcade, it's been a very liberating experience, because I'm no longer shackled to a desk and stuff. You know, I can just go out and do it whenever, however, you know, wherever, more or less. And I'm pretty happy with that. I can't complain. You know, I really can't. I find that it consolidates my time really well. It frees up a lot of time. I get to go and I get to enjoy myself making movies and stuff, and while I go through this trudge, and it really takes a lot of the tension out of my day. It also made rendering easy, so I've had the joints of my body are screwed. They've been screwed for like a really long time. And I just kind of lived with it, I think. And so my left elbow as well as my wrist has been progressively degrading due to arthritis and stuff. And so I went ahead and learning to render on the Odin was nice because normally when I would render, I'd render at a desk. And so my arm, well, my elbow would have to sit on the desk to type, use the mouse, whatever the hell it was that I was doing at the time. And it would put pressure on that nerve. So my whole lower arm would just go numb. And so working on the Odin, I think, with everything being done with like my hands, I can literally go lay the Odin in my lap. And then I can go and do video editing. And at that point, the video editing capabilities of the Odin is so nice that I can just set it up, export the file, transfer it over to my phone, and then use my phone to upload it to YouTube. And that's how all of these videos got there. And it's really nice. Like, it really just has been a real huge boon for me. I was really skeptical about it. Like, I was on the bandwagon of, I'm just going to go and I'm just going to keep going and making them on the Mac. And I love the quality of the Mac. I love what I can do with it and stuff, but I find that as I continue to make these videos, as I continue to crank these games out, I want something that's accessible. I want something that works for me. You know, I love making vids, but I don't want to be in pain while doing it. I sure as hell don't want to struggle any harder than what I have to. So these games have been tailored. The platform's been tailored. I do what I can, when I can, how I can, and I'm very happy with that, I think. So the later videos, the later commentary videos for these arcade games, it's not even going to be so much about the game. Like, there are going to be observations about the game, you know, in the commentary vids, but it's going to be process. It's going to be the process. Sorry about that. It's going to be the overall process, how I got it done, what I had to do. It's going to be life memories as well, probably from like my childhood and stuff, because I do feel like sharing that, and I think it would be really, really nice. And you know, like I'm feeling more, I think, with these commentaries, I'm feeling more reflective, I think, of a lot of things and stuff. You know, it's gonna definitely be like a mixed package, but I think it's gonna be wonderful while doing so. You know, like I literally have nothing to complain about at this point. I'm gonna be talking a little bit about life and stuff because there are gonna be changes. You know, anybody who's been keeping up with Twitter and stuff and the various news feeds knows what's going on and stuff, and you know how that's gonna impact video production. And but as it stands right now, the Summer of Arcade, by the time you're hearing this, the Summer of Arcade is most likely already going to be over. It's going to have been running for a couple of months. And then these videos are going to be hitting in mid-fall, maybe early winter. You know, it's going to be a combo package. The summer is just going to be awesome SNK games, and then the winter is going to be reflections and musings. So, but with that thought in mind, this is the first commentary video for all of these wonderful SNK games. I wanted to thank you for hanging out and stuff. Thank you for stopping in, taking a look at this video. There's way more to come. And as always, be kind to yourself, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.